The galaxy of the 41st millennium is absolutely teeming with creepy, unsolved mysteries, and in this series, we're cataloging and documenting each and every one of them. In this video, we're going to be taking a closer look at a region of space known as Deadhenge, an abandoned sector that 300 years ago was the site of a mysterious, unexplainable celestial phenomena, one that was not taken seriously by the Imperium until it was too late. What followed was an apocalyptic extinction event that spread out over 60 light years, leading to the deaths of untold billions and the largest mass exodus in Imperial history. What makes this mystery so particularly ominous is that by all accounts the threat has passed. The region exists within Imperial territory, yet for centuries, no effort has been made to reclaim it. In fact, the only Imperial presence documented to be operating in or near Deadhenge is that of the Holy Ordos of the Emperor's Inquisition. And if you've been following this series, you know wherever they or their agents are, a creepy unsolved mystery isn't far behind. But what happened in Deadhenge all those centuries ago? What was the strange phenomena at its core, and where did it go? What were all of those people running from, and why is this lifeless region still under such a close watch by the Inquisition hundreds of years later? We're going to be getting into all that and a whole lot more, but before we dive headfirst into the grimdark, a quick shout out to this video's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Warhammer 40,000 Tacticus, the definitive tactical Warhammer gaming experience on mobile. If you hadn't heard the big news yet, the Adeptus Custodes have finally been added to the game as a playable faction, with the Blade Champion Carrion now being featured as part of the Battle Pass. This guy wields a pair of crackling Archaeotech blades and is a momentum-based bruiser, who ramps up his damage potential the longer he stays in battle. His passive allows him to deal bonus attacks to large targets, and if none are adjacent to him, he does an area attack instead. His active not only hits super hard, but can also be used multiple times throughout a battle and gets stronger based on how many times he's already attacked. He's an absolute beast, and he's shaping up to be one of my favorite characters in-game. If you've never played it before, Tacticus is the absolute perfect game to jump into anytime, anywhere. It's got everything a fan of the grimdark future could possibly want. Over 70 iconic champions, 19 playable factions, extensive PvE and PvP content, and a super nostalgic art style. And speaking of content, there's an absolute ton of it. I'm talking faction-specific campaigns, PvP arenas, salvage missions, co-op guild raids, and monthly events that keep expanding the universe. Whether you're a veteran looking to jump back in, or you've yet to try out Tacticus for yourself, now is a perfect opportunity to download the game for free by using my link in the description. Again, click on my link in the description to download and play Tacticus for free today. Big thanks to Tacticus for sponsoring this video. Given the nature of 40K as a franchise, I wouldn't fault you for believing that every celestial phenomena or cosmic event in the grimdark future is an imminent threat to mankind, bristling with good old-fashioned horrors beyond human comprehension. But the reality is that the overwhelming majority of them that have been cataloged by the Imperium are rather benign or uneventful, and since they don't make for particularly exciting stories, they don't tend to attract the spotlight very often. One such supposedly unremarkable anomaly was said to have existed near the Argo system. Now, records pertaining to the anomaly's nature are almost entirely non-existent. We don't know when the Imperium first discovered it or what they believed it was. The only concrete information that we're given is a brief visual description, claiming that it was vast, dark, and swirling. That being said, considering that it was located in a highly populated region of Imperial territory and no attempt was ever made to destroy it or relocate the population centers, stands to reason that the Imperium viewed it as just another entry in a long list of idle cosmic curiosities. Things that were strange but ultimately non-threatening to human life and unlikely to interfere in the Imperial production efforts. However, with this one in particular, the Imperium was not the only faction that knew of its existence, for there was another, far older species that took its potential much more seriously. The invasion came without warning. It was a day like any other when a combined total of 6 Eldar craft worlds materialized in a circle around the anomaly. Now, just a single craft world showing up in Imperial space unannounced is already a massive threat, but 6 at once? It was an unprecedented flexing of military might by the Eldari, and from the Imperium's perspective, an unquestionable declaration of war. However, before the Imperium could muster a response, the craft worlds disappeared as quickly as they had arrived, vanishing in a pulse of crackling etheric energy and impossibly taking the Anomaly with them. What happened next is almost entirely undocumented, both in-universe and in terms of published lore. But what we do know is this event triggered the single largest mass exodus in Imperial history. Immediately following the disappearance of the craft world, every prime sun within 60 light years was extinguished, burnt out in an instant like candles against a freezing gale. Needless to say, this was an unprecedentedly dangerous situation, but the Imperium still had a little bit of time to act. I'll be honest, I had to do a little bit of research into this myself, as I wasn't sure what would happen if a sun just suddenly disappeared. And as it turns out, our Earth wouldn't just be suddenly plunged into freezing darkness immediately. By the end of the first week, average planet-wide temperatures would reach freezing, or 32 degrees Fahrenheit. By the end of the first year, they would hit -100. And throughout that time, widespread looting and anarchy would become rampant as the population panicked and governmental systems began to break down. Assuming that we had somewhere else to go, ferrying an entire population off of Earth within a single year would be a massive and near impossible undertaking. But remember, in this story, this isn't just happening to a single planet. It's happening to thousands, perhaps even tens of thousands at once. The Imperium had no time to lose and immediately began the colossal effort of evacuating the area. The Imperial Navy and countless transport fleets scrambled to save as many lives as possible, but in the end, it's estimated that only 12% of the population and 32% of the sector's heavy industry was successfully relocated. Now, years later, this once thriving region now consists of nothing more than a ring of dead worlds and abandoned orbital platforms. It would be renamed Deadhenge, labeled Forbidden Territory, and go on to be completely abandoned by the Imperium. With the lack of an Imperial presence here, and thus law and order, over the years, Deadhenge would attract a plethora of would-be fortune seekers eager to pick over its many frozen planetary carcasses. Eventually, it would become a refuge for pirates and a paradise for scavengers. Unfortunately, that's pretty much everything that we've been told about this particular event, as the primary source the mystery comes from is just a bit of background fluff in the 6th edition core rulebook for the 40K tabletop game. So what actually happened here? What were the Eldar trying to do? Or worse, what were they trying to stop? At face value, this seems like a hit-and-run attack on a massive scale. The Eldar harnessed their godlike technology and combined psychic might to initiate a surprise attack that the Imperium would not possibly be able to respond to. One where they dip in, cause a widespread cosmic apocalypse, and then dip back out. It's certainly not out of their military capability, but it's not adding up. What purpose did the Anomaly serve, and why did it disappear along with them? Is it something that they created? A byproduct of the ritual used to pull the attack off? Or maybe this wasn't really an attack at all. Maybe the Anomaly itself was just a red herring in the story, and the combined energy of so many stars was the real target. Was the resulting mass extinction event triggered by their theft simply an unfortunate necessity to the Eldar? Now, if you'll allow me to theorize on this one, I gotta be honest, I'm not buying it. If it was an attack, then why was such an awesome display of power deployed against such a pointless region that held little to no tactical value to the Imperium? The Eldar were not attacking a sector with famous forge worlds like Ryza or Metallica. This wasn't a key military nexus. It certainly wasn't worthless, but an attack of this magnitude here just doesn't make sense strategically. And make no mistake, the scale here is staggering. 6 full craft worlds showed up. Not strike teams, not a single combined fleet, the craft worlds themselves. That kind of deployment is almost never done unless the stakes are apocalyptic. It's a huge flex of military power, but it's also incredibly risky. No sane Eldar commander would gather so many of their dwindling number in one place unless the threat demanded it. And even if such a request was issued, it's highly unlikely that all of the craft worlds needed for such an operation would actually be able to agree with each other enough to pull it off. Again, unless this was viewed as a dire necessity. And then there's the matter of the stars themselves. We're not talking about a single system getting wiped out. It was every star within 60 light years, which is a staggering radius. Now, I'll admit, the text calls the stars prime suns, which may be discounting things like red dwarfs. But even still, we're talking thousands of stars, countless systems, planets, and colonies, all condemned to an icy death. That's god-level technology that would make even the Necrons from the War in Heaven blush. It's my belief that this anomaly, dismissed by the Imperium as harmless, may have been the precursor to some kind of extinction-level event. Whether it be something more mundane from our perspective, like a massive warp rift or a focal point for a future chaos incursion, or maybe something far more nefarious, like an unclassified intelligent entity attempting to enter real space. Be it a warp spawn horror attempting to claw its way through the fabric of reality, or perhaps even something worse, something beyond the Imperium's current understanding. What if the Eldar didn't come here to attack, but to seal something away? Now, I'll admit, this is me giving the Eldar the benefit of the doubt, and I should point out that some fans speculate the exact opposite to be true. Some believe that the anomaly and the energy of so many stars were components to be used in an experiment to create new soul stones, something the Eldar race desperately needs. But at the end of the day, we don't really know. This is one of those mysteries that hasn't really been given a lot of attention, and thus there's not a lot of evidence here to make a truly informed guess. And trust me, I did my due diligence. I spent a couple of days scrolling back through tons of different documents, trying to find references to Deadhenge, and for the most part, came up empty-handed, with the exception of a single short story, appropriately named Deadhenge. The story is set centuries after the aforementioned events, and although it's an enjoyable read, it's admittedly a pretty standard Space Marine affair. Members of the Death Watch are sent into Deadhenge on a mission to track down a Dark Eldar Archon and a homunculus, who have been hiding out here and using the region as a staging ground for raids on the surrounding systems. What follows is a gritty tale about revenge, loss, and some solid fight scenes. Most of what we learn about the region itself is revealed through offhanded comments from the characters. It's never really given any direct attention. In fact, we're even told the Space Marines being deployed here have no idea why the region was ever abandoned in the first place, as, from their perspective, it is fully capable of supporting life. You see, in this story, it's implied that those smugglers and pirates that showed up to the region after the apocalypse centuries before would end up settling the area and repopulating. Eventually, that population reached upwards into the hundreds of thousands. Certainly nothing compared to the countless billions from before, but it's pretty impressive nonetheless. But how were they able to do this if there were no stars? The story never directly mentions anything about dead suns, and although not explicitly stated, we can safely assume that over time, those stars would end up being reignited. Whether they're operating at a reduced capacity from before or they're fully back to normal is, however, never really explored here. We just know that the region is once again habitable. So here's my big question then, the one that keeps me up at night, the one I can't stop thinking about. If this area of space, which again has been abandoned for centuries, exists smack dab in the middle of Imperial territory, is still full of vital resources, technology, and centers of industry, and is currently existing unpoliced, which has created a dangerous haven for Xenos, including literal flesh-crafting homunculi covens, why on earth has the Imperium made no attempt at recolonizing? It would take practically no effort, especially when compared to other notable campaigns of reconquest in the Imperium's past. Even stranger to me is why is the only Imperial presence here the Inquisition? What do the Ordos know about Deadhenge that they aren't telling us? Is it possible that the Inquisition has classified whatever was discovered or unleashed back when the Eldar intervened? Could this unknown threat have survived and simply gone dormant? Are we looking at a time bomb waiting to go off again? Or was this simply an act of war that the Imperium was never able to truly recover from? I've mentioned this in a few videos before, but Games Workshop has a habit of planting seeds, tiny bits of mysterious lore in rulebooks, short stories, or campaign blurbs that, at the time of writing, just seem like a little bit of background fluff. Then, years later, they will go back and flesh those out into full campaigns, novel lines, and a whole bunch more. I feel like Deadhenge is one of those seeds, but until Games Workshop gets around to writing more about it, it will remain one of Warhammer 40K's creepiest unsolved mysteries. But what do you guys think of this one? What do you think the anomaly actually was? Do you think the Eldar were trying to prevent an even larger catastrophe from occurring? And if you do, then do you think they were justified in their actions? Why do you think the Imperium hasn't retaken Deadhenge if it's capable of supporting life again? Let me know all of your thoughts, comments, questions, concerns, and ideas for future videos down in the comment section below. And definitely let me know of any other spooky unsolved mysteries that you'd love to hear me talk about. Also, leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you think I've earned it. Big thanks to everyone who supports all the work that I do, and I will catch you all in the next one.